Ordinance Board of Appeals 2 board meeting for May 11th, 2016. Start with a roll call. Mr. D'Angelo is not here. Mr. Colmorgan?
Present.
Mr. Stickney?
Present.
And Sauger's here. We do have a quorum. We'll go to report from the city liaison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to report that all of the parties on the consent agenda this afternoon have been notified by mail of the ordinance board meeting, which is required per ordinance. I'd like to remove the following cases from the agenda as they have been cleaned up prior to the meeting. So please remove case number 3, G160037, 42649 Stallion Court. Case number 6, G160040, 4119 17 Mile Road. Case number 8, G160042, 43054 Hartwick Drive. And case number 9, G160043, 43050. I'd also like to move items number 4, 5, and 7 to the new business agenda.
All right, they would become 9A, B, and C in the orders you read those. And if I'm reading this correctly, number 2 and 10 are the only two then remaining on the consent agenda?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I so move. Mr. Chairman, I have to abstain from the minutes part of that since I wasn't present for the October 14th meeting.
The approval for the minutes? Okay.
Support everything else.
Okay. So the first motion is by Mr. Stickney to approve the consent agenda, support by Mr. Colmorgan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Second, I'll need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion and a support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Both are approved. We'll go on to public hearings. I believe this that we don't have any on this one.
Mr. Chairman, yes, the public hearing that is on the agenda today for 42161 Sheener Road, that has been removed from the agenda.
All right, so we have no public hearings, nothing under old business. Under new business, 9A would be case number G16. It's item number 4, G160038, 13251 Clinton River Road. Report from the city.
Thank you. This case was submitted by Craig Serafino, Code Enforcement Officer. The initial inspection date was 3/22/2016. There were 3 violation notices sent, and as of today, May 11th, 2016, the outdoor storage, there are yard items. They have been removed, but cinder blocks and wood is still in front of the garage, and there are still some garbage cans improperly stored, and there's some loose debris in the driveway. I have a presentation. Here's the front of the property. And you can just see some loose, needs to be cleaned up. There's some areas that need to be repaired next to the driveway. There's some scraps of items. There's open cans that are also in the front yard. They should be in the side with lids. Here's some stored items around the back. There's a cage and some other items, a bin, and it looks like a snow blower and a bike outside there. And then there's some there. This was taken today. This needs to be cleaned up here. Again, the ruts needs to be cleaned up along the driveway edge. And there's an open can, but also a cinder block and a couple of scraps of wood there, and that's the end of the presentation.
All right, thank you. Anyone wishing to speak on this property, please step forward. Right up here to the podium. And just state your name for the record, please.
Thomasina Priest?
All right, you would be the homeowner then?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything in the presentation you want to speak about or present to us today?
Most of it, I mean, the driveway was cleaned and the rut was filled, and you can see the grass that I seeded is starting to come up. The cans, I didn't realize that I wasn't allowed to keep them in front of the garage. I will move those and remove the wood and the cinder block. This weekend, I had gotten a little bit of work done on the front, a lot of the weed whacking and stuff. A lot of the end of my driveway floods every time it rains. Keeping the debris, that's almost a daily thing. If it rains, I gotta be out there sweeping. It's something that I will keep up on. I didn't realize that it was that much of an issue.
Okay. You understand everything that they've addressed with you then, though?
I do.
Okay. There was also some cinder blocks or boards or something in front of the gutter. Was that holding next to the garage? Was that holding the downspout?
It was holding the gutter up. The bottom of the gutter had fallen. It was going down too low, so I had propped it up a little bit. I guess I didn't glue it properly, or
Okay.
however that was supposed to work.
All right, so you do know you
But
have to
I
address
mean,
that
the
as
gutter
well.
part is taken care of. I just haven't moved the cinder blocks.
Okay. At this point, I'll open up for any questions from the board.
I have one question. I saw on one of the slides an awful lot of dandelions. Have those been taken care of?
The what?
Yeah, the dandelions wouldn't be a violation in itself.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Okay. Other than that, I guess, how much more time do you need to?
This weekend. I'm actually trying to get this weekend off again so that I can get it done.
Okay. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
At this point, I'd bring it back to the board. Anyone in the public wishing to speak first on this property? Seeing none, bring it back to the board for a motion.
Resolved to declare that a public nuisance exists on the property commonly known as 13251 Clinton River Road, and to direct the code official to abate the violations identified in the attached reports which give rise to this finding immediately. The board also authorizes and approves the imposition of a lien against the property in the amount of the cost of abatement incurred by the city as permitted by the applicable city ordinance.
Okay, I have a motion for Mr. Colmorgan. Do I have support?
So moved.
I have support from Mr. Stickney. To the vote, Mr. Colmorgan,
Yes.
Mr. Stickney,
Yes.
and Sauger, yes. Motion passes. You've got some time. Obviously, you said you needed a week. You've got some time. It's going to go to the city to be abated. By the time it gets abated to them, you'll probably have that cleaned up. So as soon as you have the garbage can put away, any of the stuff taken care of, notify the code enforcement officer, and everything will be taken care of at that point.
The Craig? Is
Yes.
that- Okay.
Yep. All set?
Okay.
All right, you're all set.
Thank you.
Next case is item number 59B, actually now G160039-40442 Lexington Park Drive. And a report from the city.
Thank you. Paul Geiger, Code Enforcement Coordinator for Sterling Heights. This was submitted by Craig Serafino, Code Enforcement, Craig Serafino, Code Enforcement Officer. It was a complaint, and the initial inspection was 3/28/2016. There were 2 violation notices sent, and as of today, most of the items do still exist, except the debris in the yard and pool was mostly removed. But all the other issues listed there remain, including there's 7 listed. Also, number 8 would be that the fence on the property is under 48 inches tall. It doesn't have the proper latches. It doesn't have a self-closing, self-latching gate that should be where there's an in-ground pool. So I have a presentation. Here's the front of the property. This is just some items in the driveway's kind of messy. You can see needs to be swept up. You can see up there by the front door too. Scrap. It's like a torn piece of carpet. It's on the step. Now that the landscaping blocks were removed, and this needs to be fixed. It looks like they just pulled the blocks out and left this like this. And of course, there's weeds also need to be removed. A part of a tree. And some other items, broken pots there along the side yard. And here's the first one of the pool. There was garbage bags that were thrown into the stagnant water. You see there's no pool cover. We need to have a safety cover put on this. As I mentioned, most of the debris was pulled out of the water now. So the debris issue's gone, but it's still open. Some more stuff by the back of the house, and also I think there shows here a fence that's listed as number 1. There's a fence that's in disrepair. There's a piece broken off, and this is tied up. And we have downspout that's in disrepair also. Another one missing. And you can see a little more of the landscaping there too, that there's plastic showing. And I believe that's the dead tree. You can see the bark's fallen off. Looks like it's been dead quite a while. Here's today. Pool's still open, stagnant water. Still have weeds, still have debris. There's some things were removed, but those pots weren't. That's the end of the presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Geiger. It looks like we've received correspondence from the property maintenance company. Mr. Geiger, just for clarification, if we abate the property immediately, it still does take 7 days or so to. They're saying obviously in this that the pool will be taken care of by Friday. It seems to be that would be done quicker than if we were to abate it here today.
Yeah. I would probably just put an abatement date maybe for a week from today or something. May 18th, and then if there's nothing to abate, then nothing will be done.
Okay. Okay, there's nobody in the public wishing to speak on this property. Bring it back to the board for a motion.
Resolved to declare that a public nuisance exists on the property commonly known as 40442 Lexington Park Drive, and to direct the code official to abate the violations identified in the attached staff reports, which give rise to this finding immediately. The board also authorizes and approves the imposition of a lien against the property in the amount of the cost of abatement incurred by the city as permitted by the applicable city ordinance.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Comorgan. Do I have support? Support by Mr. Stickney. Roll call vote. Mr. Comorgan.
Yes.
Mr. Stickney.
Yes.
And Sauger, yes. Motion passes. Item 9C. It is item number 7 on the consent agenda, G160041, address of 11500 Farthing Drive. Mr. Geiger.
Thank you. This one is brought forward by Pat Willis, Code Enforcement Officer. There has been multiple previous Ordinance Board actions on this property. This time the initial inspection date is 2/4/2016. 3 violation notices sent, and there is debris in the yard, piles of wood chips in the front yard, and the garage roof is in disrepair. And as of today, there's no change. I have a presentation. Here's the front of the property. See, the lawn is completely dead, and there's wood chips scattered about. Zoning ordinance does require that areas that are not the driveway or part of a driveway or circle drive have to be some sort of living plant material. Here is the roof of the garage. And here's another angle. It's in pretty severe disrepair. It looks like there's just some pieces of shingles placed up there in kind of a haphazard way. And here's another angle of the front yard. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Geiger. Looks like we have a correspondence on this one from the homeowner that they will be out of town for 4 weeks. Roofing damage caused by sustained wind damage. There's nobody in the audience wishing to speak on this one. We'll open this up for a motion from the board.
All right.
Mr. Stickney.
Yes, resolved to declare that a public nuisance exists on the property commonly known as 11500 Farthing Drive, and direct the code enforcement official to abate the violations identified in the attached staff reports which give rise to this finding immediately. The board also authorizes and approves the imposition of a lien against the property in the amount of the cost of the abatement occurred by the city as permitted by the applicable city ordinance.
A motion by Mr. Stickney. Do I have support by Mr. Colmorgan? Roll call vote. Mr. Stickney.
Yes.
Mr. Colmorgan.
Yes.
And Sauger, yes. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 10, public participation. Seeing no one in the audience, we'll move on to item number 11. Let's look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion, do I have support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned.